Hello and welcome for another evening live. Just checking that I've got the right audio set up, microphone set, camera set. Good evening. We're live across Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. As I published earlier today, I thought I would go live 8 o'clock this evening. So just checking that the live stream is coming through. Yep, it's there. Just popping up now. If you're joining me, thank you for joining me. Let me know you're there. Give us a thumbs up, drop a comment, say hello. I am planning on just talking on some kind of basic financial literacy topics this evening. So rather than doing the lunchtime live that I have been doing over 12:30 on a Friday, doing it tonight instead. This topic, something that's come up a couple of times in the last week or so on my Instagram. Lawrence, if you're catching this, you've probably prompted this more than most, and a couple of other phone calls that I've had separately anyway on the topic. So I thought I would share a little bit about some basic financial literacy things that you might have interest in, or be able to help your children when you're having conversations about some of these things. And they're asking about money and you're looking to start to invest, or you've got some money and you're looking to start to invest for your kids. So a couple of people there on the live stream on LinkedIn. We'll get into it. As you are probably aware, I'm a dad. I've got a couple of kids. They're probably a little bit too young to be worrying about money and those kind of things, but I am making a concerted effort to just help them understand where money comes from. We live in a world at the moment where everything's touch and go, often with the phone, let alone a card, let alone taking money out of the wallet and ATM. So some of these, understanding money and where it comes from, how we get it, can be a challenge for a lot of people that haven't grown up with seeing cash around. Hi, Graham. Thanks for joining me. Good to see you there. And you were part of the reason, the feedback from Tuesday last week. You're also part of the reason why I decided to do it on an evening instead. So I just wanted to start with looking at, where money comes from and helping kids understand where the money comes from in the first place. So it's important that they understand that you go to work. So as a parent, you go to work, you have a job, maybe you run your own business, maybe you're an employee, but there's some work being done, and in return you are paid for that work. Now, with all that's going on with COVID, people working from home, or some people having worked from home now going back to an office, I think there's a lot of children will have an understanding of what their parents now actually do. And if you asked my kids, they would say that I just sit in the room next door talking the whole time. I just talk and talk and talk. I'm on the phone. And for someone that would otherwise describe themselves as pretty quiet, fairly reserved, even though I am going live across a couple of platforms at the moment, for me to sit there talking all day is quite foreign. So anyway, this idea of going to work, I think something that we can look to, and this is just me getting thoughts straight in my head, is I think we need to understand, or we need to help our children understand the different types of work or the different types of jobs that we can do. And I think in putting notes together for this evening's presentation, there's kind of three main areas, I think. So you're either going to be making something, so in manufacturing, either going to be reselling something, or being of service to someone else. And so I'll just touch on each of those. So in the manufacturing, you're using bits and pieces to assemble something to then ultimately sell. So there's some sales involved there. But you can work in manufacturing, so you're making something to sell. You're working in reselling, so you're buying something that someone else has made and then on selling that to someone else. Think of JB Hi-Fi, for example. They buy some TVs that maybe Samsung has made, and then they on sell them to me to replace the TV over my shoulder here. So you've got this idea of selling something or reselling And then the final one being of service to someone. So providing a service to someone to do something that either they can't do themselves or they don't want to do themselves. So I guess in the line of work that I do, I'm in financial advice, the provision of a service. That is something that you could well and truly go and do yourself. I don't have any access to anything special, whiz-bang machines or anything that you can't do yourself, but through study and education and the like, you build some skills. Accountants, lawyers, all the same, through to the person that can cut your grass. So could you get your lawnmower and go and cut the grass? Yes, but a service instead is having someone cut that grass for you. So they're the kind of the three broad areas in which I would be encouraging you to tell your kids about. Moving on from there is this idea of once your children are actually working, earning some money, getting some money from somewhere, some way, shape or form. This idea of paying yourself first, or saving or investing first. And there's a distinction between saving and investing, which I want to touch on, and I'll elaborate on that in a second. But paying yourself first, saving or investing, and then spending the difference. So rather than doing it the other way around, saying, I'm going to earn a particular amount of money, I might get paid for my part-time job on a weekly basis, I'll spend something and then I'll save what's left over. That doesn't actually work in practice. A lot of people say they're going to do that, but it doesn't actually work. What is better is to siphon off some money from what you've earned for saving, for investing. Again, I'll elaborate on the difference there. But siphon that off first, and then you kind of spend what's left over. Looking at saving and investing, they're two very different things. So this is a topic that I would encourage you to try and spend some time helping your children understand. Saving is just the delaying of future consumption. So you're putting money away, saving money as the word goes, but that's ultimately money that will be spent on something else. So you can earn money and spend it today, or you can save some money and spend something into the future. For example, when I had my part-time job through high school and uni, I was working at Kmart under the age of 18. I was working, saving to buy a car. Not probably the wisest financial decision looking back in time, but for me at the time it was an absolute necessity. So that was me saving up money to actually be spent at a point in time in the future. Very different to investing. So investing is the purchase of an asset, be it shares, be it property, be it part ownership in a business, whatever it is, to benefit from the future growth in that business, the value of that business, and the income that business or that investment might derive for you over time. So that income might be used to fund consumption, but that income is continual. If you bought a property, for example, you'll earn rent each month after month after month after month. If you've got some shares, you'll earn some dividends. You get the idea. So that's money that you're putting away that there is ideally no intent to sell that asset and then use that money for consumption, but rather you benefit from the growth, the appreciation of that asset over time, and or the income that produces along the way, which can actually go towards funding consumption. So a very big difference between saving and investing. They're not the same thing. And something that I didn't know as I was growing up, something that I've come to realize over time, but there is an important difference there. The next step, when you move on to in investing, and there's a graphic here that I've grabbed from a financial planning colleague of mine. He shared on LinkedIn. He had it on his Instagram page as well, and I'll post up a link to his page and tag him afterwards. But I have grabbed this graphic to share here, which I just want to bring up, and this helps with this idea of compounding returns. So what we've got here on the screen is this graphic that I'll just make it a tad bigger, see if that comes up a bit bigger on the screen. That doesn't make too much difference. So compound returns is kind of this wonder of investing, and this is the one thing that, if I can stress anything, that you try to elaborate to your children or help them understand over time, is this idea of compound returns. So it's this graph here that you earn interest on top of interest on top of interest, and that accelerates the accumulation of the asset base over time. What's interesting here, and you can easily replicate this, and rather than me replicate it myself, I just grabbed the graphic, and as I said, I'll tag it afterwards. But this is looking at two different people. So investor one and investor two. Investor one, starting at age 25. Now the age is irrelevant, but the time period here is what's the powerful piece. So investor one starts at age 25 back here, sets aside $5,000 every year for 10 years through until age 34. And then does nothing. $5,000 every year for 10 years, and then does nothing, and assume that investment earns a rate of 8%. Again, the interest rate doesn't matter. The interest rate on both investments are the same. The rate itself doesn't matter. You compare that to investor two. Starts later, starts at age 35, sets aside $5,000 every year, and does that for 30 years. So 35 through until 65. And you'll see the results over here. The first person has only set aside $50,000, $5,000 every year for 10 years, whereas the second person has set aside significantly more. But you can see, because of the power of compounding and time, that they don't catch them. Eventually, if you keep going here, they'll get closer and closer and closer together. But you can see over this, what's a 40-year time horizon, they don't actually meet. This graphic is incredibly important for highlighting two things: starting early, being consistent, but also highlights the compound returns. So if you can share anything with your kids, it's start earlier, start sooner rather than later in any investing that they're doing. Buy something, keep buying it, don't sell it, don't touch it, and you'll be much, much, much better off for that in the future. So it's this kind of delayed gratification, delayed spending. Moving on from the topic of compound returns, the next area is tax. So I get this question a lot from clients. The clients themselves doing very well in their own right. We've got some planning underway for them. But often they turn to say, my children have got $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. They've got some money. It's come from somewhere. Often it's come from gifts, so baptisms and christenings, bar mitzvahs, Christmas, all those kind of things, religious type events, birthdays, gifts from people. This money's accumulated, and quite commonly parents setting aside some money for their kids to give to them at some point in the future. Might be $10 a month, $100 a month, whatever. The number doesn't matter. But often, as I said, this conversation comes up that they've saved some money set aside for their kids, and they're looking to do something more with it once there's actually a meaningful amount of money. First thing we need to understand is tax. And so the tax system in Australia is it isn't very generous to people under the age of 18, minors, for what's called unearned income. So if a minor has money in their own name and they earn interest, they earn dividends, they earn rent, these kind of things, anything over about $400 is taxed at the top marginal tax rate. This is some tax rules designed to try and stop the parents from distributing money or investing money in the kids' names, and them getting the concessional tax rates on the first kind of tax-free threshold and beyond. So it's to try and stop parents from sheltering money from their own names and having it taxed in the hands of their kids. But if the kids themselves have gotten money from somewhere, they've earned money and invested it, they've received gifts and they've invested those kind of things, it is quite a penalty interest, quite onerous tax, penalty tax, quite onerous tax treatment for anything that's unearned. So what often ends up happening is that any investments that are being made for the children are actually held in the parents' names. Now, if it's a couple, there might be one member of the couple's earning more than the other. You can look at investing in the younger couples, in the younger member of that couple's, the lower income earning member of the couple's name. You can be doing that. The other thing is using things like investment bonds, and there's various structures and strategies available where you can shelter earnings tax from some of these accounts. But tax is a big issue. So if we're starting to get a reasonable lump sum of money, a few $1,000s, starting to do something with it, it doesn't take much for that to earn this unearned income. And if it was held in the children's name, there'd be penalty taxes to pay. So better that is often held in the lower income earning member of the couple's name, if there is a couple available to do that with. Then when we turn to the actual investing itself, so you look at, money often starts being built up in cash accounts. You might get adventurous into a term deposit or an online savings account, something like that. But particularly at the moment, interest rates are next to non-existent. 3-month term deposit rate, you get 0.5% or something like that. So it's practically pointless having money sitting in those types of accounts for lengthy periods of time. They serve their purpose, but not for what we're talking about here. This is where some of these platforms that have become available, micro investing, fractional investing, these kind of things, some platforms, investment accounts that are now available where you can, with very small amounts of money and very small regular deposits, we're talking $5, $10, very small amounts of money, you can actually be starting to invest in share markets. Properties are a bit more difficult. It's a bit lumpy. You need a whole chunk of money to do that. But much smaller amounts of money on a regular basis. There's these range of platforms, these micro investing platforms that are now available that 5 years ago they didn't exist, where you can actually start to get involved in the share market. Often the investment options are index focused, so there's an index of the Australian share markets, an index of overseas share markets. But that's okay for these types of structures, these types of investing. That's okay. Really, all you need is some market exposure. You don't need to be trying to beat the market. That's for another day. That's for something else. If you're not aware, there's a fantastic podcast Glenn James runs called My Millennial Money. One of their episodes, episode 316B. So they have lots and lots and lots of episodes. But if you go back to episode 316B, they do a deep dive into comparing the features and the costs and the benefits of 4 of these types of platforms that are available in the market. There's an option from CommSec, an offshoot from Commonwealth Bank. There's an option from a group called Raise. There's an option from a group called Vanguard. And there's an option from another group called Spaceship, which came to market a couple of years ago with a super fund, but they now have a small investment platform. There's the 4 of those. I won't go into the detail around those, but they are 4 players in the market that fit very well in this space. What's right for you and what's not. Have a listen to the podcast, do your own research, but they are ones that can fit very well. So if you follow kind of what I've gone through there, this idea of compounding returns, if you can help your children understand that from an earlier age and get them saving so they're investing some money straight away, taking advantage of these compounding returns, being aware of tax and the penalties that apply for unearned income for people under the age of 18, taking advantage of some of these micro investing platforms that are available where you can invest small amounts of money regularly. It builds the right habits, the foundations for them to then take on until later in life and hopefully set themselves up quite well for the future. That's all I wanted to cover today. Basic intro into financial literacy and some topics that may be of value to your kids. If you've jumped in and out, I will put this up on my podcast. I'll strip the audio straight away. This will be up on my podcast channel before I go to bed tonight. So you can listen to the audio there. Graham, if you're still there, thank you for watching this far through. I think you might be the only one. There's only me and you watching on LinkedIn this evening. It's a whole lot quieter tonight than what it was last week. So thank you for sticking with me. that's it for this evening. I won't do a LinkedIn Live on Friday at 12:30. Hopefully look to do another one of these at 8 o'clock next Tuesday. But I'll put a post up so you know my movements, and you can tune in if you so please. That's it for me this evening. Thank you. Bye.